with Aztec Software and GED Testing Service. We're thrilled to have this co-branded product with Aztec. Aztec is a premier publishing partner of ours. They're great to work with, and it's a terrific product here that's been developed. So what is it? So it is, GED Ready is GED Flash is practice test questions. The number one piece of feedback we've received from students is they want more practice test questions. It's by far the number one request we've received when we've asked students, kind of for their wish list, what more could we do for them? So they want more practice test questions and practice test questions that provide feedback for them. So GED Flash hits this mark exactly. There are more than 6,000 practice test questions across the 4 subject areas. I mean, that is a lot of practice test questions. And they're the type of practice test questions, of course, that similar to what the people are going to see on the actual test. So they're great preparation. Students will receive instant feedback with answer explanation in this GED Flash product when they're going through with using these practice test questions. It's available anywhere. It can be used on a mobile phone, tablet, or of course computer. I think you guys, I'm sure, see, and we see that students are more and more doing so much on their mobile phones. So it's a very mobile-friendly product. So it's available for adult education programs, GED Flash for organizations. Adult education programs will purchase through Aztec Software. We actually have a couple of folks from Aztec Software who I asked to join here at the beginning. I'll let them say a couple of words after I get through a few more slides. And if you have any questions for them at that time, Aztec Software has a booth there. They're a vendor as well. So adult education programs who use this product will have, you'll have great access to administrative reports showing student performance, performance data, time on task, strengths and weaknesses, all of that back-end data that is crucial for you guys to be able to look at. And the bottom link there is just a quick demo to the GED Flash product there on the Aztec website. So I'll just go through these next couple of slides quickly, but as I said, the GED Flash product was developed between GED Testing Service and Aztec Software. We work closely together to develop this product, and the goal is to have students just provide that more and more practice that they're asking for to help them build that confidence when they actually go in and test. We know confidence is a crucial factor. I hear so much from educators about students even who are prepared to test still just feeling a little bit unsure about themselves. Just a quick visual of a GED Flash question. In the middle of the screen there, you can see there's a question. I know it's not that easy to see from this view, but there's the question, and below that is the feedback they're going to get once they answer the question with that step-by-step explanations about whether they got the answer right or not, and then answer explanation. So one important piece here you guys should know is GED Testing Service. Our assessment team did an efficacy study about GED Flash in terms of, is it performing the way we expected it to? And we were really pleased with the results. So over half of regular GED Flash users moved up an entire score level on the GED Ready practice test, and some moved up 2 score levels. So in other words, those who are regularly using this GED Flash product, a lot of them moved up from too close to call into that likely to pass level on GED Ready, and some moved up from not likely to pass all the way up to likely to pass on GED Ready. Few more things in the data. So for the low users on the GED Flash group, on the math test, they had a mean score of 144. Those who were using Flash, but not that much in terms of the amount of practice test questions they were going through. But those GED Flash users who were answering a lot of questions and really getting in good practice, the high users, they had a mean GED test math score of 148. So I think the statement there is obvious that a 144, of course, for the low users is slightly below passing. 148, of course, for those who were practicing and using it frequently, they were above the passing point for math. And of course, math is the most challenging subject for students. And one last piece of data here, in terms of GED Flash, this shows that just the more questions, practice test questions students were answering, the more they got correct, and it really built their confidence. So those who were answering 340 questions or more, they were getting about 90% of those correct, as compared to those who were answering significantly less, only getting about 50% of the GED Flash questions correct. So it's just a practice makes perfect. The more questions folks were answering, the more they got correct. And again, just kind of building confidence through that practice in each subject area. And again, those folks who were getting more answers correct, about 80% of the GED Flash users told us that they felt more confident going in to take the GED test after using GED Flash. This is a quick visual in terms of what the back-end reporting would look like for adult educators. You're going to have access to all of this important data, all of that stuff I talked about, and performance data, strengths and weaknesses, all of that, all of the data that you got that's vital to you guys. The licensing model for GED Flash is a concurrent model. So you purchase a number of licenses that you'll need at any time. I like the parking lot example. It just makes a lot of sense to me that if I run a center and we have 10 parking spots for students, that doesn't mean that it's limited to just 10 students. It just means only 10 students can be using it at one time. So that's the way the concurrent licensing model works for this product as well. GED Play, that's the other product that we have co-branded with Aztec Software. This is on-demand video learning. It is designed as a supplemental instruction for your classes. So some of the things that GED adult ed programs have told us, they've expressed the need for really, engaging distance learning tools that are going to supplement their instruction with some additional high quality instruction, and be able to build the educators to be able to track students on time on task, which I know is key, of course. Corrections, I'm not sure if there's anyone from corrections on this call, but corrections, of course, have unique needs in terms of, not for students oftentimes not being able to be online, of course. So the GED Play product works offline, and certainly both these products work very well in the correctional setting. So as I said, GED Play it's on-demand video learning designed as a supplement to your, whether it's in person or probably more commonly right now, remote learning. The program was designed by Kaplan, and it measures performance on key GED measured skills. And again, it's a product with Aztec Software and GED Testing Service. So with GED Play, you will get extensive content. So hours of video instruction covering all 4 GED test subjects. There are targeted lessons. Things are easy to digest. You get these short bite-sized lessons. And these videos, they're pre-recorded videos from expert instructors at Kaplan. So, example of using this would be you have a learner, whether it's in person or remote, you're covering a certain topic with them, let's just say fractions. And then at a certain point, you give them, maybe it's homework, maybe it's just time where they're going to go off by themselves and do a little supplemental instruction through this GED Play, specifically, let's just say on that topic of fractions. GED Play and Flash, you can be purchased together. Obviously, they do kind of work symbiotically together, but they can be purchased separately as well. So it can be either purchased separately, or you can purchase both of them together. And I put my contact information there. Certainly, you can also are welcome to talk with Melissa and Adrian from Aztec Software. And before I move on, I just want to give Melissa, I think, do you want to say a couple of words there? Fill in a couple of blanks maybe that I've left out?
You were very thorough, Scott. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Boy, I guess the only things I would add would be based on my experience working with customers over these last 6-7 months or so. The insights that the students receive, the fact that they get very robust, complete responses, whether they're correct or incorrect. Teachers and students really enjoy that. I know Scott mentioned the confidence levels at 80%. I think the biggest thing during this challenging time of remote learning is that we've created additional multimodal resources for you to use. And I have a lot of customers that will have their students watch one of the GED Play videos, which are led by master teachers, I'll add. They'll watch one of the videos, then they'll work on their flash or vice versa. And then they'll check the progress, they'll look at the data, and then they can craft their lesson plans based on, what they're finding in the data. The videos, I will also mention, tend to run between 3 and 15 minutes, depending on the topic. And as Scott flashed, no pun intended, we are running a special bundle if programs are interested in purchasing them both together. I put my contact information up here. I'm presenting this afternoon at 2:30 as well. Scott's going to join us for that too. So I hope you can join us and let us know if you'd like to be set up with a demo. I can certainly do that for you.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. Bobby, before I move past this section, were there any, I can't see the questions when I'm in slide presentation, but was there any specific questions about GED Flash or GED Play before I move on?
Right now, Scott, I am not seeing any questions. I will direct folks to the chat. Melissa put her contact phone number there as well as email address. And then, okay. Scott, I see your email is right here on the screen. Does anybody have any questions? If so, you can either unmute to ask Scott or you can put it in the chat.
I shall move forward. Okay, a few resources and additional information before I move into the online proctored information. So I just want to remind folks of our professional development page. We continue to do these Tuesdays for Teachers professional development webinars regularly during this pandemic. But I think our attendance has gone up on these Tuesdays for Teachers webinars because a lot of folks are at home now and they're not in the class, so it's probably easier to attend. So there's a link to our page there. We just did a couple of Tuesdays for Teachers sessions this past week, actually. So once we complete them, they go right up on the website there, and they're available to listen to on demand. All of the slides are there that we presented and any other supplemental material. Also, we put this up at the beginning of the pandemic. It's essentially our COVID educator support page. So just wanted to make you guys aware of this. We have a link there. There's a lot of good information on this page. There's lots of information about distance learning, communicating with students, all sorts of links that'll take you have valuable information that would be helpful during this time where a lot of instruction is remote learning, or certainly a hybrid that's going on right now. One last resource I just want to make you guys aware of. If anyone's looking to print out flyers, related to GED testing, you can do so via our website. I know oftentimes I see you at conferences. Of course, you pick up material from me. And if anyone's looking for for test brochures or other flyers, you can always contact me, and I do have some stuff at my house here I could ship out to you. But some of these things you can just go to our website and print out for yourself. So just a look there. That's on our GED.com webpage on the Educator and Administrators portion of the website, where these printable flyers are, and just a sample of some of the flyers you can print out. If you're looking to promote your program, looking to just to let people know how they would get started. Various things you can print out here in terms of flyers in English and in Spanish if you have you're interacting with folks who frequently speak Spanish. Okay. The online proctored GED test. So let's get into the heart of the matter here. So I'm going to go through a number of slides here on the online proctored GED test, and then I will pause for questions before I get into kind of the last portion of the presentation. I'm just going to keep an eye on time here. We're doing fine on time. So in terms of the national situation here, I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't already know, that the availability of in-person GED testing certainly has been reduced during the pandemic due to stay-at-home orders across the US. This was particularly acute in April and May, when I know across the country, GED testing was really severely limited. In Ohio, I remember at one point, interacting with some educators who had students who were looking to test, and I think at one point in Ohio, we had one test center open, in April or May at that point. That has changed at this point. I'll talk more about that in the next slide or two. But overall, certainly the availability of in-person testing has been significantly reduced. Reopening status of in-person testing really is varying greatly from state to state. Some states have reopened probably 80 to 90% of their test centers, and other states may have reopened about 20% of their test centers. So it really does vary widely. I know I've heard this to a certain degree, certainly we've heard this from students. I'm sure you've heard this to some degree, that, I think some students are wary of in-person testing right now due to health concerns, whether it's health concerns for themselves, or maybe they're living with family members, maybe older family members who they're concerned about and want to be careful about, and just they're trying to limit social interactions, and maybe they view being a testing center as a risk. So people still need a good option to take the GED test. I mean, people are enrolling in college. I mean, more than ever, they're needing to find jobs, change jobs, join the military. I mean, we've seen all of these. I mean, life continues here and life goes on, and people need to be able to test. So the online proctored GED test, and we've been referring to it as a pilot because when we launched it back in early June, late May, early June, we didn't have all the features that we wanted to have available, and we have built those out over time, but we've been referring to it as a pilot because of that. So the basics. Test takers can take the GED test from the comfort of their home or another location that meets the criteria. And I'll talk more about what I mean by criteria here on some of the upcoming slides. So what is it? It's the GED test is being delivered online and is continually monitored by a trained proctor, and we have some artificial intelligence as well. So a test taker taking the OP exam is sitting, let's just say, at their home. They are taking the exam. A proctor is viewing them via their webcam, to make sure they're not cheating, they're not using a phone or their book or whatnot. And we also, as I said, have some artificial intelligence built in as well, just for test security reasons. Test security is definitely a big concern with the online proctored GED test, certainly. Who is administering the test? So it's the GED Testing Service. We've contracted with OnView. OnView is a part of Pearson VUE, and that's how the online proctored GED test is delivered. And throughout this, I probably will say online proctored. Sometimes I might just say OP for short. It's just when you're going to say online proctored, or when you're typing it out so many times, it just gets easier to say OP. Important there, that last bullet. We are not moving away from the in-person testing center model at all. I mean, the OP test is not something we were planning on launching at all, really. I mean, it was something we had some vague discussions about, that it might be good for people in remote areas, or it might be good to help some test takers maybe who have certain accommodations. But really, it was just minor discussions we were having until, of course, early to mid-March hit, and all of a sudden the world changed, and we said, we have to have a testing option for folks, and we went into kind of hyper speed to roll out this online proctored GED test. But really, we still see moving forward, and at some point when we come back to whatever you want to call a new normal, we really see the vast majority of GED testing will move back to in-person testing in a test center. It really is just a more secure environment. And even right now, just so you know, nationally, over the last few months, About 80 to 85% of GED testing has been in-person testing, and somewhere in the range of 15 to 20% has been online proctored testing. So in-person testing, even during the pandemic here, still is the majority of GED testing that's happening. But the OP test, it is a terrific option for certainly, that's say 20% of the population. And it's more than that in some states. It all depends on how much states have reopened in terms of their testing centers. So students, for how to take an OP GED test, students will just go to their GED.com account as they normally would, and they will register and schedule for their OP GED test via their GED.com account. Key things here: it requires a laptop or a desktop computer that must have a camera and a microphone and a stable internet connection. I'm probably going to get this question. I believe I've got it a bunch, and it's a good question. The OP GED test, it does not work with Chromebooks. So it has to be a Windows-based or Apple-based in terms of their operating system. So it does not, unfortunately, work with Chromebooks. The Chromebooks operating system just does not work to support it. Students must be in an enclosed room with a door that can be shut. It has to be a quiet environment. Of course, there can be no other individuals in the room while a student is testing. One other key thing here is for just the OP test, students must earn a score of 145 or higher on the GED Ready test within the past 60 days in any subject area they wish to take. So we are requiring a GED Ready score of 145 or higher in order to be eligible to take the OP GED test. Students must complete a system check at the time of their appointment. So if I schedule an OP GED test, at the time of my appointment, before my test actually starts, I will have to go through a system check to make sure that the computer I'm using supports a delivery of the OP exam. The good thing here is students can actually do this system check in advance to make sure that their system will support delivery of the OP exam, and I put that link in there. So we certainly recommend that. We recommend that even before students schedule an exam, do the system check to make sure that your system is viable to deliver the OP exam. And in the vast majority of cases, it will be. Okay, so a couple things here on numbers and benefits. So thus far nationally, we've seen about 14,000 individuals have taken an OP GED test, and about 5,500 have become passers, meaning they've passed all 4 parts of the test and have now earned their credential based on whatever state they live in. In Ohio, before we had to stop the OP GED test, and I'm going to get into that in the next slide. I know that raises questions. What do you mean you had to stop it? We had about 24 people took in Ohio took the OP exam, and then we had to temporarily stop the OP exam. And again, next slide, I'm going to get into the details on that, why we had to stop it and what the timetable is to restart it. The benefits, few benefits. First benefit to me is appointment times are available 24/7. So of course it's first come, first serve. I mean, you may not be able to get an appointment time. If I wanted to test later today, maybe I couldn't get my exact appointment time. But if I just wanted to go out a day or 2 days or next week, essentially appointments are available 24/7. So if for some reason 2 a.m. on a Tuesday morning works for me, I'm sure they can find an appointment at 2 a.m. So that really is a good benefit, convenient for students. Another important one is test takers can cancel or reschedule their OP appointment up to 15 minutes before their scheduled appointment time. So I think probably most of you know that with in-person testing, test takers who schedule have to cancel or reschedule 24 hours or more in advance when they're testing in a test center. With the OP test, it does provide some more flexibility. They can make these changes with canceling, getting a refund, or rescheduling all the way up to 15 minutes before their appointment time. Certainly, they can test from the comfort of their home or other location that meets the OP testing criteria that I just talked about, meaning a quiet, enclosed room, computer with a webcam and audio, all of that. GED test vouchers will work for OP just as they use for in-person testing. That's good news. So for those of you, I certainly, if a test taker is using one of those $80 vouchers that they can get from the state of Ohio, that voucher will work either way, whether they're taking the in-person test or if they're going to the OP delivery route. Okay, the Ohio OP situation and timeline. Okay, I'm gonna give people a little background here. In June, the online Proctored GED test became available to Ohio residents across the country and including Ohio. Things were going pretty smoothly until early July, when unfortunately we were informed by the Ohio Department of Administrative Services that we would need to temporarily stop delivering the OP test in Ohio because there was some additional documents that we needed to complete, given that this was a new delivery method of delivering the GED test. So we had to put a stop to things at that point. We had a conversation with them. We hope that we can continue offering the OP test while we were working on completing this paperwork. They said that wasn't the case. So we had to temporarily stop the OP test in Ohio. We've completed all of the documentation that they've asked us to complete, and we're just waiting on next steps. And this has unfortunately kind of dragged on longer than any of us, I think, expected. I know when I submitted this session request about 6 weeks ago, I really thought the OP GED test in Ohio would be back up and running at this point. We aren't yet. We're getting closer, and I hope it will be soon. But unfortunately, we're not back up and running yet with the OP GED test available in Ohio. I think it's vital, though. I mean, as I've said, we really need this option for Ohio test takers. And I'll go to the next slide here because segues into a couple things I wanted to say. So in Ohio, about 50% of GED testing centers that do in-person testing have reopened. So that's approximately about 45 centers across the state who have reopened. I mean, it's actually better than some states, but still, it's only about 50% of centers. You know, we used to have upwards of about 90 GED testing centers across the state. And now we only have about 45 that have reopened at this point. Keep in mind, many of the centers that have reopened are working with reduced hours and reduced seats as well in order to meet safety protocols. So oftentimes, while a center will reopen, they won't be open the same amount of hours and days that they were pre-pandemic, and maybe they had 12 seats available for testing pre-pandemic. They may now have 6 seats available. So appointments are just harder to come by. Certainly this year, this isn't surprising. We've seen about 50% fewer GED test passers in Ohio. So the bottom line here, we really need the OP option as a supplement to in-person testing in Ohio. I know I've been looking around the state recently at where testing is available, where it isn't. And, you know, there are definitely some problem areas. I mean, Columbus, for example, I'm looking at our 2 main testing centers in Columbus, where the vast majority of GED testing happens in Columbus. Both have not reopened, and I've talked with both of them. They probably won't reopen until the spring semester. One of them might open this year, but I'm kind of betting at this point that they're not. So just mentioning that Columbus, one area, but there are areas across the state where, maybe you do have a GED testing center that's reopened, great, but it's a challenge certainly in various parts of the state where they have not reopened, and you may have to potentially drive a significant ways to find in-person testing. Okay, going through a few more things here related to the OP GED test. So students, once this gets restarted in Ohio, that being the key thing, and again, I hope it's pretty soon, students will need a government-issued identification. So they're going to need a driver's license, learner's permit, passport, or other, DMV-issued identification. Couple policy differences here with the OP exam versus in-person. These are important to keep in mind. With the OP GED test, students will be able to use the on-screen calculator, but they will not be able to use the handheld calculator for the OP test. And it's a security issue. As I said earlier, the OP GED test, it's just not as secure as in person. And the calculator, information can be stored in a calculator, and it's viewed as a security risk in terms of possible cheating. The other difference is students do not have a dry erase board with the OP GED test. I think most of you, if not all of you, know that when students go in to do in-person testing, they're given a dry erase board that they can take notes on, practice, work out problems, especially in math. With the OP GED test, again, this is a security concern. We don't allow them to have scratch paper or a dry erase board. They have what we call a virtual whiteboard, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And that's kind of what they would use to kind of try to work out problems or take some notes, prepare an outline, maybe for the extended response, whatever they're doing. Students cannot take unscheduled breaks during the OP exam. I mean, this is probably obvious, but just, with people at home, sometimes when you're taking an OP exam, some people think, oh, I'll just get up in the middle of it and, go get a glass of water or use the bathroom. You can't do that. Once the test starts, you need to be in your seat so the proctor can view you at all times until your test ends. So as I was just mentioning, as I was saying, students don't have the dry erase board and they can't use scratch paper for the OP GED test. They have two tools. One of them we call a scratch pad. So you're looking at, let's say I'm taking the OP exam, that's a visual there. That scratch pad is circled in red, they can bring it up. It basically functions as a Word document. I used it when I took an OP exam before we actually rolled it out. I took one to make sure it was going well. I took reasoning through language arts, and I used the scratch pad to do a quick outline when I was doing the essay portion before I actually started writing. And it works fine. It basically works as a little Word doc. It's not great for math, though. I'll be quite honest about it. I mean, I don't think it's a great tool for math. What we recommend for math is the on-screen whiteboard. So again, when they're taking the OP exam, they can bring up this on-screen whiteboard. They can make it larger or smaller. This is a better tool for them in terms of math. And I think that math is definitely the subject where people, I think, most heavily will use a dry erase board. So this on-screen whiteboard, students can practice with it in advance, which we definitely would recommend that they become comfortable with this in advance before they actually go in and take their OP GED test. So preparing your students. So let's say, and I hope the OP GED test is back available in Ohio soon. What can you do once it is available to prepare your students? So certainly once it's available, again, just making your students aware that there is an OP testing option. Talk about the differences with them between OP testing and in person, and I have a really good we have a really good document on that I think will be quite useful for you once OP testing gets started again in Ohio. They'll have to get that GED Ready score of 145 or higher in the past 60 days in order to be eligible to take the OP test. So certainly you can be working with them on that to make sure they're achieving that score if they do want to go the OP route. Making students aware of OP test resources. Some of the things two main resources I'm going to talk about there. One is the calculator tutorial, because remember, they're not going to be able to use a handheld, so they're going to need to be comfortable using that on-screen calculator. And number two is the virtual whiteboard that I just mentioned. They can practice with that in advance, and I really would highly recommend that they do. And just a last bullet there, OP testing, it's not the best option for all students. It's a terrific option for some students, but it's not the best option for all students. I mean, maybe you have students who you think really might, not having the dry erase board might be a real issue for them, or they really want that physical calculator, or for some reason, they just the home environment is not a good environment for them to be testing in. So it's not the best option for everyone, but I certainly think for some of your students, it is a good option for them. Okay, so let me just go through a couple more slides and I can pause here. I'm just going to do a quick time check here. Okay, 11:51. So here is the link to the whiteboard that they can practice with. So they click on that link and it'll take them to the whiteboard, and they can certainly practice with that. And if some of you guys as educators want to practice with it as well, so you can help your students, great. It's just a visual of the whiteboard. I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory. I mean, you're using your mouse to basically click and kind of draw notes. I don't have it. This isn't live, so I can't show you here live. But I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory, but it definitely could use some you can use some practice with it before going in to actually take the OP-GED test. I really would recommend that. I mean, I'm not saying I'm talking about hours of practice, but even 10, 15 minutes of just practicing with it a little bit certainly will be helpful. Here's the link to the calculator tutorial. So this is the link to the on-screen calculator tutorial. We've had this for ages, but just want to make sure you guys are aware of this. Just a quick note on this one. The OP-GED test, it is available in Spanish. If you have any Spanish-speaking folks who you think would be testing in Spanish, there is one portion of the OP when they actually go. If I'm scheduling my GED test, OP-GED test in Spanish, the actual check-in process is not in Spanish; it's in English. So this link here is actually a good link that shows folks who are testing in Spanish what they need to know at that check-in process. This link is full of online Proctored GED test resources for educators. So you see that link there. We have the link to the calculator tutorial there. We have the link to the whiteboard. We have all sorts of other, all the information really you want related to OP-GED testing is at that link below. And this is really designed, that link is for educators and test administrators. This is that page I referenced earlier about that shows the differences between the GED tests delivered via OP testing versus in person. So it's going to point out things like, talk about like the calculator, like the dry erase board, things like that. But this is a really good, this could be printed out, and I certainly recommend once you guys can get restarted with the OP test in Ohio, this would be a great sheet just to print out, have available, or have it as a PDF to be able to send to students.
Scott, this is Bobby, and there's a question that might be applicable for what you just had up.
Sure.
So one of our participants has asked this question: once a student starts the OP testing, do all of the tests have to be OP, or can a student start with the OP but do remaining tests in person?
Yep, excellent question. So good news, they can go back and forth between OP GED testing and in-person GED testing. They can absolutely do that. So I'll just give a quick example there. Let's say I'm going to take an OP test, and I take my OP test via math. And for whatever reason, I say, you know what? I think I would rather go into an in-person testing center. I could then schedule my next test in person. So they absolutely can go back and forth between the two delivery methods. I could have 2 passing scores, 2 subjects on OP, 2 from in person, and I'm a passer. So they absolutely can do that.
Okay, that's great. Good answer for that. And then another question, we have a couple here.
Sure.
When will the OP testing start in Ohio? Was that?
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question. I would love to have a specific answer as to when the OP-GED test will be available again in Ohio. As I said, I really thought when I was doing this session, when I submitted it, that we would be up and running at this point. It's dragged on, unfortunately, longer than I expected. I don't know at this point. I mean, I'm hoping that the OP-GED test will be available for Ohio test takers in November or December. That's my best guess at this point, that sometime this month or next month.
Okay, thank you, Scott. And I'm putting that in the chat as well. We had another participant ask for, can you just cover for everyone what is actually on the GED test? Just kind of maybe some of the basics was their question.
Sure. Just in general? Oh, sure. So, I mean, the GED test is comprised of 4 subjects. So you have language arts, math, social studies, and science. Each You have to pass all 4 subject areas with a 145 or higher in order to be a GED test passer, and you're then receiving your credential from the state of Ohio. I'll just mention a couple of things. You know, the test forms that are being delivered for the OP test are different from the in-person test. So they are a little bit, the test forms are a little bit different. So in other words, if I go in and take the GED test, math test in person, and then let's say I didn't pass it and I took my next test, math test via OP, you know, the tests, the math test, they wouldn't be identical. There would be a little bit of difference between the two, and that's really for security purposes. You know, not to have, we wouldn't want the exact same test available. So there are different forms. It's just as there are different forms of the GED test when you're testing in person, there's different forms for the OP test.
Thank you, Scott, for that answer. We do actually have another question as well.
Sure.
There's a participant that has new instructors who have never seen a GED test. They'd like to try a GED practice test similar to the GED Ready test so that they can have more credibility with the students they're preparing and teaching. Is there a way for them to take the GED Ready test or something similar?
Absolutely. So we highly encourage instructors to take the GED Ready test. Yes. So all their instructors would need to do is they'll need to go to GED.com and they'll set up an account just as a student would. I would recommend, I would ask them to use a personal email address and not a work email address when they're setting up their account. So they'll just set up their account at GED.com, and this will also provide them the benefit of just seeing, you know, what the student goes through when they register. And then once they just do a brief initial registration, it'll take a few minutes, won't take more than that. They can then take a GED Ready test. And I'll offer even better news that, you know, I'm happy to provide some GED Ready vouchers to you so that your instructors wouldn't have to pay for the GED Ready test. They could just use one of these vouchers and it will cover the cost for them. Because we really want instructors to do this. It will be really helpful for them because the GED Ready test, of course, the look and feel and the type of questions are exactly the same as they're going to see on the actual test. So it's really, I would highly recommend to any instructor, and especially new instructors, to take a GED Ready. So all I would need for, and I can't see the questions from just the view I have currently, but I would just ask if they could just reach out to me with a simple email and just introduce yourself and mention you want your instructors to take the GED Ready. I will instantaneously send you over some GED Ready vouchers that you can use for your staff members or your students as well. I'll send you over a little batch of them.
Okay, and I posted that your response as well, Scott, in the chat to connect with you. And then there's another question: how do they finesse the question about whether or not they have a high school diploma? I'm guessing, is that related to the instructors signing up to take the GED Ready? I'm not real clear on that question, but it is, how do they finesse the question about whether or not they have a high school diploma?
Yeah, you'll just answer the question no.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. I mean, we have folks who aren't actually planning on taking the GED test, create accounts. So just don't worry about it. Of course, you're not actually going to be taking the actual GED test ever. So you just answer the question no in order to move on to the next screen.
Okay, thank you. I have not seen another question come in yet, but please post your questions and we'll have Scott answer them if you have any additional questions.
Okay, so I actually wanted to, rather than, I actually just like to show briefly via my GED.com account, as opposed to doing this through slides. So this is my GED.com account. I created a student account just as I'm recommending you all do. So I'm eligible to take an online proctored GED test. So just scrolling down here, you can see I've gotten that green score on the practice test, which means a 145 or higher. And down here it says online testing now available. So I could click on that, but I'm just going to go up here and click schedule test. And once, at $1 for every time I'm going to say this during this presentation, once OP testing is available again in Ohio, students will see both options. They will see in person or they will see online. One thing I highly recommend they look at before they schedule the schedule online test, to click on this learn more about online testing link. This has great information for them, and it's just going to take a second to load here.
Scott, they're saying they don't see your screen.
Maybe that's because, thank you. Maybe that's because
Mine says I'm viewing the screen, but participants are not seeing it.
participants are not. So Bobby, you can see my screen currently?
Yes, I can.
Okay, but participants can't. Okay, well, obviously I'm not going to go further on this if they can't see my screen, unfortunately. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. And okay, can everyone see this now? Again, the PowerPoint.
Yes, the PowerPoints are showing.
Okay, sorry, I don't know why, a little technical issue there in terms of why I couldn't see when I left the PowerPoint. Sorry, I can't show a live demo, but I'll show you a few screens here just to give you a sense of when students are scheduling. So let me just jump to that screen so it's going to tell them what's needed to test online. I think some of the things, I've talked about all of these earlier in the presentation, but it's of course going to it's going to tell them, what they're going to need in order to take an OP GED test. And this is what I was just trying to show online, where it tells them all about the online GED test. This is what they're going to see on the screen, which they clearly would scroll through. So there's a link there to that system test I mentioned earlier on. They can run that system check on their computer before scheduling an OP GED test, just to make sure that it's going to work on their system. So all of this information is really good information from them, and we recommend they go through this before they schedule their test. And then this shows them computer system requirements. Again, they're going to need an operating system, Windows 10 or Windows 8.1 or a Mac operating system. So just a little bit of technical stuff there, pretty straightforward. And then here is the screen I was trying to show earlier when folks couldn't see. So once the OP GED test is available again in Ohio, test takers, when they go to schedule, will see the two options. They can in person or online. If they go the online route, they will, of course, be able to choose any subject that they're eligible for, and they would be eligible for the subject by getting a 145 or higher on that GED Ready test in that subject area. Here, so the appointment times, as I was saying, 24/7 for appointments. So you can see here, if you can see it there on the left-hand side, towards the bottom, it says morning. So, I could schedule an appointment at 12 a.m. or 12:45 a.m. And, people do, obviously, most people are testing during the day or evening, but weekends also are available. Weekends tend to fill up quickly, I guess, maybe for obvious reasons that a lot of people are working during the week, maybe a 9-to-5 schedule, and they'd like to test on the weekends. But appointments, it certainly is very convenient with appointment times. And then, of course, we'll go through the payment screen. It's going to look exactly the same as if they were scheduling an in-person test in terms of the payment screen. And as I mentioned there, if they have a voucher, if they have one of those $80 vouchers from the state of Ohio, they will enter it there in that voucher promotion field there, right in the middle of the screen. Again, whether they're taking an OP GED test or in person, those vouchers will work. And then they'll just, as you can see here, entered a voucher and it's brought the cost to $0. In this case, it was a 100% off voucher. And then I think this is the last screen I'll show here, but I've scheduled my online social studies test. It's 2 p.m. Central Time, and I can launch the exam 30 minutes before my scheduled time. That launch button will be active. So at that point at 1:30, I could come in and launch it and go through the check-in process. Just briefly, at the check-in process, the test taker, they'll need to run that system check that I mentioned to make sure the OP GED test is going to work on their computer. They'll also have to, via their smartphone, this is the way the vast majority of people would do it, be taking photos of the front and back of their identification, and they'll be taking 4 photos of their testing room. Basically, they'll be to show, just what their desk looks like where they are testing. It's really easy to do. They'll just be walked through it on screen as to how to do this. I've done it a couple of times. It really is straightforward in terms of how to upload the ID and the photos of the room you'll be testing. So with that, I will come out of the presentation, and I'm guessing if maybe some more questions came in.
Yep, couple more questions, Scott, and we have about 6 minutes left to our session time.
Right.
I did also post your email in the chat. Someone asked for that, but let's start with this question, and that is there a limit to how many GED ready exams one can take?
Yeah, good question. So we don't have a limit on the GED ready, the practice test, in terms of how many times an individual can take it. That's up to them. I will say, just as a word to the wise, the GED ready was really, it's designed as really to be taken at the point when you think somebody is likely, when you've been preparing somebody, you think, okay, I believe Scott is ready to take the GED math test, but let's have him take a GED ready test to confirm that. That's really when it's designed to be delivered. So in other words, it's not designed to be delivered over and over and over again. I see people sometimes doing that, and honestly, if you do it enough, it can kind of create a kind of a false positive, where if you're just taking it enough and getting used to some of the questions, I think. So really designed as sort of an end of preparation, where you think, I think my student is ready to test. Let's have him take a GED. Let's have he or she take a GED ready test.
Okay, and we have another question. Thank you for that answer. And this is, if I'm understanding it correctly, someone has asked for the web address for calculation and general web address for GED information calculator use. So is that 2 separate things, the general GED information for calculator use?
So I'm trying to think here. I would recommend just going, if you go to the educator and administrator page on GED, so you go to GED.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, there's the educator and administrator page, which of course is for educators and administrators. You open that page and just type in calculator in the search functionality. I mean, you'll get everything on that page related to the calculator. You're going to get the tutorial, and any other information we have up there about the calculator, which is that Texas Instruments XS30 calculator.
Okay, thank you, Scott. A little bit of a clarification was the web address for calculator practice. Is that on the GED.com?
Sure is. Yep. It's. I have it.
Okay.
I'll put it up on the screen again, but it's in the PowerPoint. Oops, sorry, wrong one. So there it is, right there. That's the calculator tutorial link. If students take a GED ready as well, the calculator or the on-screen calculator will be available for them as well then. So, I mean, that's good practice if they're taking a GED ready. And of course, they're going to have to take a GED ready if they want to go the OP route. So just another way to get comfortable with that on-screen calculator.
Okay, we have about 3 minutes left, Scott. I don't see any additional questions. Does anybody want to ask Scott anything before we end?
So, I'm sorry that it's the OP GED test is not available today. I really did think it would be by now, but as I said, we're pushing forward and try to get whatever is left for us to do to get this up and running again in Ohio. We're trying to expedite things. So again, I hope sometime this month or next month it'll be available again as an option for your test takers. Okay,
and then we did have a teacher post in the chat that that person encourages their students to test early, and they feel like that it is important to view the reports, particularly with the math. in order to see where a student needs remediation. And those reports are a tool to customize a student's lesson.
Yep, completely agree with that.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. I do see a lot of thank you, gratitude for your session, Scott. We appreciate it.
Likewise, thank you all for attending. I hope it was useful information for you. And certainly I've kept this slide up here with my email. Feel free, please reach out to me anytime. You have questions, you have any issues, come to me. I can pretty much guarantee I can get them solved one way or another.
Great. Well, thank you, Scott. It looks like we have just made it in our time slot, which is fabulous. And we appreciate your time sharing your information with us today.
Thank you, Bobby.